Week 5 in the high school football season in the state of Iowa is officially in the books, and that means we are more than halfway through the regular season, which is pretty crazy to believe. Here at iFootball, bringing you something a little bit different today. We're going to do a little Saturday morning recap instead of a live stream late at night. That way we can kind of dig into the scores and really talk about everybody. I'm going to bring Nick in. Nick is here with us, helping us out. Nick, give me your first initial thought. What stood out to you last night?
The first thing that stood out to me was definitely the Clear Lake win over Webster City last night, 10-2 for Clear Lake, and it was really surprising to see that, a team that I thought was as strong as Webster City didn't even score a single touchdown. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty crazy to see, but I mean, I think this is definitely some reason to give Clear Lake love in the Class 3A rankings this week.
Yeah, for sure. I think that one definitely stood out. Webster City, like you said, they look like a contender, and now all of a sudden they lose two in a row. And now we're kind of wondering what is this team. So that's a good point. But we are going to start with Class 5A. I'm gonna pull up the Saturday scoreboard. That should be Class 5A. It is, so you guys can see that as Nick and I kind of talk. I'm going to give my first game that stood out, Nick, and then I'll let you talk about yours and the game that you were at. I'm going to rattle some scores off first. Some notable ones. Prairie picking up a nice win over Iowa City Liberty. Your upset pick did not quite come to fruition there. I want to give a shout out to Muscatine. Ty Kozad just went nuts on Davenport Wets. He ran all over the place. We're probably going to have a little stat for him coming out soon. I'm going to let you talk about Hawkeyes and Johnston. Urbandale picked up a nice win over Sioux City North. Pleasant Valley picking up another win against Dubuque Senior and Bettendorf. They stay perfect with a rout over Dubuque Hempstead. Valley picking up a nice win over Ames. They really needed that one. Cedar Falls, that's a more notable one, picking up a win over Linn-Mar at the Unidome. Southeast Polk stays strong. The one I want to talk about, though, Cedar Rapids Kennedy picks up a win over Iowa City High, really in a dominating fashion, and that Kennedy offense is electric. I don't know. I think Kennedy and Bettendorf play eventually down the road, I believe, on the top of my head, but Cedar Rapids Kennedy is looking like one of the better teams out east in Class 5A. I really like what they bring. Gian Forte, Cyrus Courtney, White. I mean, they got studs all over the place, and they got one of the best offensive linemen blocking for them. So really impressed with Cedar Rapids Kennedy. Shout out to them. Nick, I'm gonna let you go ahead and talk about what you saw from Hawkeyes and Johnston last night.
Yeah, this was a defensive showdown. I mean, when you're watching this, you're thinking this is like Big Ten football. This is just straight up great defenses battling it out the whole game. We didn't really see a lot of passing. That was one thing I noticed as I was walking past the crowds on either side. You could just hear them yelling like, "Come on, we need to pass the ball." I thought that was kind of funny, but this was a great low scoring game. After the first half, Johnson scored in the first quarter. I got a great shot of that. Will Nuss pass in there for a touchdown. And then a field goal was all that was left for Johnson after that. And Waukee had a big run. It was I don't have the exact yardage, but it was probably about a 40, 30-yard run that they scored for that one. And after that, there was nothing in the third quarter. And then Waukee with a huge scoop and score. We posted that on the socials last night. It was such an incredible game. I mean, these two were going just head to head the whole game. It was close all the way through. And at the end of the day, it just took one mistake. It just took the pocket collapsing, and Will Nuss was forced to use his legs, and he got hit pretty hard in the backfield. And I mean, one drop ball, and he was able to take it all the way back. So that was the deciding factor. And all of a sudden, Waukee's 4-1.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive. I didn't really expect that from them this season, but I mean, yeah, that was really fun to be watching that game.
Yeah, no doubt. I want to bring it up because I'm noticing in a lot of other polls we're seeing Waukee inside the top 5 or right at it. In our poll, obviously you're not the Class 5A ranker. I'm not the Class 5A ranker. Our Class 5A ranker does a great job. I'm just trying to find stuff to talk about here. But again, Waukee closer to the back of our top 10. Other polls have them inside the top 5. Where do you think this team ranks after seeing them? They're 4-1, a nice win here over Johnston. They beat Valley last week. They're one slip up to Northwest. If you had to put a number on Waukee right now, again, ahead of them in our polls is Waukee, Northwest, Cedar Falls, Prairie, Centennial, Kennedy. Are they better than any of those teams, do you think?
I mean, I would put them right underneath Kennedy right now. I
Okay.
think that they're a great team, but from my personal opinion, I would agree. I think that I would have liked them to see the pass the ball better. But I mean, I think they have a good enough run game. I think their defense looked phenomenal against a Johnson offense that has a guy like Will Nuss that's thrown to a guy like Jacob Simpson. I thought they held him pretty well. And so I think that's where I would put them. If not in the top 5, I would put them right underneath Kennedy.
Right outside the top 5. Okay, I like that. Because
Yeah.
yeah, I mean Johnson's a great team, but 1-3. I mean, they're one that one. If they don't scoop and score, and you know what I mean. I know if ifs and buts and one play just can change everything, but I think that's interesting. And Waukee is one team that's kind of really had a disparity in our poll compared to the others. So I love kind of looking at that because I love looking at the other polls and seeing how we compare. Um, Moving on in Class 5A, Ankeny picking up a big win at Iowa City West. That was my upset pick, but Ankeny obviously proving they are pretty dang good at football, and they pick up a nice win and spoil West's homecoming. That's looking like everything notable. I don't know if there's anything really crazy to talk about in Class 5A. Really nothing crazy. I think you were at the best game in Class 5A by far last night as far as ranked matchups go. So I am going to transition over to Class 4A, Nick, where we had a few notable games, a few more notable games, I'd say, as I'm going to pull up the scoreboard for you guys to check out as I kind of start this off. The first one I want to talk about, Nick, Lewis Central. We've talked about Glenwood a lot. I thought they were going to hang in this game a lot closer. Lewis Central, after a really tough non-district, again, 4 top 5 teams in their respective classes. They split. They go 2-2. The record doesn't look as pretty as many think Lewis Central should be, but they come out and pick up a huge win by 28 over a top 8 team in Glenwood. What'd you learn looking at that score? I know you weren't there. You're just looking at the score and whatnot. What does that score tell you? Oh,
But you know what? I think that Glenwood is still a great team. So, okay, yeah, you're good. Okay. Yeah, Glenwood's a great team. I think this is a huge win for Lewis Central. Again, you talk about, that the it's not exactly a pretty record, but if you look at the teams that they've played so far, it's just ridiculous. I mean, it is elite team after elite team here, and it's like you said, we're over halfway through the season. So for over halfway through the season, they've been playing ranked opponents. I mean, they have a fantastic schedule that they've had. Looks like last night Brady Hetzel 234 yards and 3 touchdowns. So the battle of the quarterbacks there. That's I love that for Lewis Central. I think that they're yet again proving themselves despite their off record. That I think they're definitely still a top title contender for Class 4A.
yeah, no doubt. Brady Hetzel is a stud. I really enjoyed watching him play, and he's got 2 really good receivers. If not, might be the best like wide receiver duo in Class 4A, and Curtis Whitty and Luwald Maker. They're gonna put up a ton of points, and I know, yeah. So they kind of prove themselves, and I think they're gonna stick pretty handily in our top 5, and really the top 7 in Class 4A is just a jumbled up mess. I think there's a safe cutoff point right behind Xavier. You got Xavier, ADM, Lewis Central, Bondurant, North Polk, North Scott, Western Dubuque. I think you can make a case for each of those teams to be at a different spot right now. So that's kind of where I'm seeing Class 4A cut off. Hopping into some other scores, Nick, our upset picks in this class went 0 for 2. Yours was pretty close. Spencer losing to Lamar's 14-7, and mine being the Winterset Huskies. They fall to Norwalk 37-17. So better luck next week in Class 4A picking upsets.
Yeah.
That's the one class where you'd think you'd be able to get some with how it's shaping up, but nope, not this week. Other notable scores. How about Gilbert, the Tigers, the lone undefeated team in Class 4A? I'm not sure they're getting talked about enough, so I will talk about them. Picking up a nice win, 49-0 over Des Moines Hoover. They moved to 5-0 again. The only team to remain undefeated in Class 4A, and they are way down there at number 10. So that just proves how elite Class 4A is. Indianola picking up a win over Ballard. ADM over Boone. No shocker there. Denison over Fort Dodge. Pella back-to-back wins after beating Xavier. They beat Carlisle. And Western Dubuque, Nick, I don't know if you know much about them. They are the first team in Class 4A to win as the number one team in like a month. They beat Waverly Shell Rock 35-23. What do you like about Western Dubuque, and do you think this is the title favorite right now in Class 4A? And if they aren't, who is?
You know what? I really like Western Dubuque. I think that I don't think they're talked about enough.
No, yeah, they're just so far. They're so
I
far on
think
the east
that
side of the
they're a
state.
really, really great. Yeah.
Oh,
You
go
hear
ahead.
me?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, you're all right. Yeah, Western Dubuque. I don't think they're talked about enough. Like I said, they've been really, really good so far. I think their one loss this year is it North Scott that they lost to?
No,
Do
they
you remember
beat
who
North
that
Scott.
was?
They beat North Scott and lost to Xavier. Their one loss is 22-20 to Xavier in
Yeah.
week 2
Okay.
or 3.
Okay, yeah. So like you see, they're beating some of the other top contenders in Class 4A and keeping it close with Xavier. This is a year where you usually see Xavier as the clear front runner. Last year, I mean, everybody kind of had a good idea it was going to be Xavier Lewis Central, and this year it is the complete opposite. I love that we're seeing so many teams that are so into the title contention. There's so many possibilities of how this can really end up shaping out. Personally, I don't think that Western Dubuque would be my pick to win it all. I think right now I am loving the way that Bondurant is playing. I think right now I think Bondurant could really pull it off. Their offense is just so good. I mean, if their defense doesn't have a great night, their offense is probably going to score 35 plus anyway. So it's still a good team to win. But I mean, you could go on and on about Western Dubuque. I hope that they're able to come out closer to us so that we're able to see them play.
Right. Yeah, totally. Nick, I'm going to put you on the spot here now that we're talking about this, and I'll give mine as well. You picked your favorite. Who is your Class 4A state title match right now? Because like I said, there's 7 teams in here that you could argue, and there's obviously some outside of it. But who right now do you see playing for the Class 4A state championship if the title were to be today?
I am going to kind of take maybe an improbable pick. I think Bondurant is already like a team. They're really good, but maybe some people wouldn't exactly call them to go to the title. I'm going to say that my state championship match is going to be Bondurant versus North Scott. I think North Scott is such a great team. They are so good. I love watching them play. They are blowing out teams. And, I think that these would be two explosive offenses. It would be such a fun game to watch. And I think it would be so good for Iowa high school football. And, I feel like those are two teams that are having really great years that maybe some people would disagree, but I think that those would be the two that I would pick for the state title match.
No, that's a really good pick, and I know knowing how Nick's picks go on social media, you're gonna get some hate for that just because everyone seems to get on you no matter what you pick. So I'll give my pick and see if I get any hate. I tell you what, if ADM, if it just stinks because if ADM had Brevendole, I think they'd be a stone cold. Like I'd be picking it, but just no
Absolutely.
Brevendole. I think it makes it a little more complicated. But from what I saw, I think they still make it. I think ADM is in the state title game, and I'm going to go Western Dubuque. I've been impressed. Again, I haven't seen them in person, but looking at their numbers, they've got an aerial threat. They've got a ground attack. Tanner Anderson, Grant Gloucester. They got Quagliano on defense. They've got studs. I like how they play, and they've already beat North Scott. I guess I'm kind of worried in some of those games where teams are going to have rematches and teams get revenge factor. So there's so much left to go in Class 4A, but I think if I had to pick a class that's my favorite right now for the dome and for the playoffs, I think it is Class 4A. But nevertheless, moving on to some scores before we move on to Class 3A. Want to give a shout out to my Clippers, Clear Creek Amana, picking up their first win over the year, 28-21 over Oskaloosa. I saw Jack Stevens had a great night. Moving on, ADM 42-0. I said that one already. North Scott convincingly over Burlington. Marion beats Waterloo East 45-16. No Xavier score, but I'm assuming they won. I didn't put them on the Saturday scoreboard because their score was not on bound. But nevertheless, I think that covers just about everything for Class 3 or Class 4A. So I'm going to go ahead and move over to Class 3A. I guess I didn't say, but Bondurant did beat Newton 42-21 on WHO. So not sure if I mentioned that one. Class 3A, some big ones. Class 3A was huge last night. And I'll start with the game I was at, Harlan and Creston. I mean, I don't know. I had kind of a weird feeling that Harlan was going to show up and blow the doors off of Creston just because that's what it seems like they do. But it was anything but that. Truly a really magical night in Creston, Iowa. Cale Turner, Brennan Hayes are legit. The numbers are not fluky. Those guys can play. Their offense is fun to watch. They find creative ways to get Brennan the ball in space. I mean, you look at his stats. He has 500 yards rushing, and he has like 500 yards receiving, and I'm sure those numbers are even more after last night. But they use him in so many ways. And I tell you what, Nick, there was a 4th and like 8 with like 2 minutes left, and Creston was inside the Harlan 20. I thought they were going to go for it. They call timeout, and I don't think Brennan Hayes is their kicker, but he's not like a kicker. He's just an athlete that's kicking the ball. He comes out and toe kicks like a line drive directly through the upright. It was just crazy, and it just speaks to how like great of a night he had. He toe kicks a 30-yard field goal and wins it. They end up getting a stop, but I was really impressed. I was also impressed with Harlan. I mean, they battled adversity in a really tough environment. It was an electric crowd, and I think our Class 3A ranker safely has a number 2 team in Creston. I think Williamsburg is the obvious one. I don't think you can take anything away from them, but Creston I think is the new safe number 2. I think there's no question about that until they fall again. Nick, looking at the Class 3A board, I know your upset pick hit. I'm going to let you talk about it.
Yeah, so first I want to give a shout out. That was a great shot that you had last night at that Crescent game. That was really awesome. But yeah, going ahead and talking about this Humboldt Hampton Dumont Cal game. I mean, I did have the upset pick there with Humboldt getting the win over HDC, but I mean, I don't know. I started to lose a little bit of hope for this Humboldt team after the last few weeks. They didn't quite look like the team that I thought that they were going to be. And this week was a huge win for them. This is how you get all your momentum back. Beating a team like Hampton Dumont Cal, who's been one of the elites in Class 3A so far. I believe they were undefeated before that game.
I think you're right.
If not, yeah, I think they were one defeated before that game. And I don't know if Humboldt has uploaded any numbers yet, but I think this is a great gritty win, holding Hampton Dumont Cal to just one score. That is the way to do it. 14-7 was the final score. Yeah, Humboldt was undefeated prior to the game. I think that would be some reason to get Humboldt back into the top 10 for Class 3A for our Class 3A ranker. Like you said, this is just another awesome week for Class 3A. Last week, there was tons of upsets. This week, tons of interesting wins yet again. And this is shaping up to be one of the most interesting classes in the state, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think you're totally right with Humboldt. it felt like they were just slipping. Like I would have thought that game would have gone a totally different way. Humboldt was going to slip out of the top 16 and we'd never hear from again. But no, that is not what happened. Hampton Newmont Cal. The one thing I will say, they're coming off a really emotional win over Nevada. You always worry about teams coming off a really emotional win like that, how they're going to bounce back the next week after another good team. And I tell you what, that district, Nick, I'm sure you kind of are aware. Like Humboldt, Hampton, Newmont, Cal, they got Webster City and Clear Lake, which you're going to talk about. They got Algona and Charles City. There are 5 teams in that district that you could argue any day that's going to win it. So that district is going to be tough. So each game is so weighted there. So Humboldt picking up a nice win. And speaking of, Nick, we go 0 for 2 in Class 4A upset picks, but we go 2-0 in Class 3A. Clear Lake beating Webster City. At the end of the day, at the end of the season, I don't know how much of an upset that's going to be. It's just where they're ranked at right now. It ended up being an upset. Clear Lake obviously had some sort of formula to stopping the wing T and what Webster City and Jackson Cherry can do. And the only time Webster City scored was on a safety. So 10-2 there, not a final score you see every day. So moving on there, nice win for Clear Lake. Algona picking up a 48-0 win over Charles City. Alex Mansky, I'm sure, had a great day. Solon, I know I listened to the Bound podcast. Blake talked about Grinnell, his hometown team, possibly beating Solon for the first time in a while. Not going to happen this year. Solon proving that they are here in Class 3A. They are one of the contenders. And Nick, we're going to talk about Williamsburg for a sec. I know they won 61-6 over South Tama, but I don't know if you saw on social media, but what Race Heitman did in the first 6 minutes of play, it was 27-0 before Williamsburg even had an offensive snap. He he had 2 pick sixes and 2 punt returns for Williamsburg before the offense even touched the ball, and they missed an extra point, so it was 27-0. And I saw the term on Twitter, Race Heisman, and I just love that, and I had to bring that up. I don't remember, it was the news guy on Instagram that I follow, but yeah, Williamsburg. I'm gonna let you go ahead and talk about them, and do you think this is the clear-cut #1 title favorite in Class 3A?
As of right now, yeah, absolutely. Williamsburg is the favorite. I mean, I think that there is no doubt that their biggest competition is going to be Creston, and I think they absolutely proved it last night. I agreed with our Class 3A ranker, them being a top 3 team. I could have seen Creston being a number 2 team as well, and they like you said earlier, they absolutely proved it. That was a huge win for them. Cale Turner is a star, but I think that Williamsburg is right now is the clear front runner without a doubt. They are playing great football, although that South Tama wasn't, they weren't the greatest team, but that is exactly what they needed to do against a team like that. Just a huge blowout win, score a bunch of points, don't give up hardly any, and after that Xavier win, I have no doubt that Williamsburg is elite. They are one of the best teams in all of the state, and this is one of the only teams that's been able to stay in the #1 spot consistently for more than a few weeks, other than Southeast Polk in 5A. So yeah, right now I think that without a doubt Williamsburg is my team.
Yeah, no doubt. They snagged that #1 spot after beating Xavier over Mount Vernon. They've held on to it pretty tightly. So I'll agree with you, Williamsburg. But I tell you what, you can mark your calendars in a few weeks. They've got a matchup with Solon, and it's a District 1, probably for the district title. I know there's a few good teams like Benton in that district as well, but you can circle that one on your calendar in a few weeks. Williamsburg and Solon doing battle. I'm not sure where that is. I think it's at Solon, if I remember correctly. But that one's going to be another top 4, unless Solon slips up again. That'll be a top 4 matchup in Class 3A coming up very shortly. A few other things before we move on to Class 2A. Mount Vernon picking up a bounce back win. They dropped 76 in a victory. Sioux Center, new to our rankings, they blank a top 10 Heelan team, 21-0. Obviously, Sioux Center is a team that's stock is rising very quickly. So you'll probably see them jump again in the rankings. And then final one, Davenport Assumption. They pick up a nice one over Fort Madison. Assumption is a sneaky team in Class 3A that I'm really a fan of. Angelo Jackson's a star there. But Nick, I don't know if you have anything else, but I think we are good to move to Class 2A.
Yeah, I think we're ready to go. I think
Yep.
the only thing I'd like to touch on once more is that Solon's offense keeps going.
Yeah. Yeah, Solon's offense after a few tough weeks to start has definitely found its rhythm. Looking at 2A, Nick, your upset hit Kemper Catholic 39-3 over Greene County. A Kemper Catholic team that's going to probably rise a lot in Class 2A. They kind of got out the gate a little slow, and they're obviously finding their feet underneath them with Brock Baiting at quarterback. My upset pick did not hit. Western Christian lost to West Lyon 20-3. Nick, I know we are not 2A experts by any means, but looking at these scores, is there anything that stands out to you? We'll put a little time into 2A today.
I see Van Meter with a pretty handed win over Clark. No surprise there. Van Meter continues to be one of the top dogs of Class 2A. Central Lion George Little Rock, they also picked up a pretty handed win over Cherokee, Washington. West Lyon, I think that was is Western Christian still ranked? That was a pretty
Yeah,
close,
they're number
I wouldn't
8.
say close game. It was a ranked matchup, yeah. 20-3 there. Um, I mean, I don't really see Monticello score is not in yet. I mean, I don't really see any crazy games. I don't think it was too crazy in that class this week.
Yeah, I Monticello for whatever reason is usually pretty slow at getting their scores in. But before we move on, I will say, Nick, I think you'd agree with me here. I think Class 2A is pretty obviously Central Lion, Georgia Little Rock, and Van Meter. I think they are on a crash course for the state title, and I think the team that's outside of that that's going to possibly disrupt it is Preston Rise and Monticello. I think if anyone else were to make the state title game, it would be a pretty significant surprise. You have West Lyon up there playing good ball, but I think what Central Lyon and Georgia Little Rock are doing, or what Central Lyon, Georgia Little Rock, and Van Meter are doing, they are just dismantling people. Like you said, Cherokee Washington is a top 10 team in Class 2A. And I know. I remember I was watching the scores. I'm like, maybe Cherokee Washington can hang in. Nope. Central Lyon, Georgia Little Rock with Graham Eben and Reese Vanderzee, they are a handful. And then Van Meter, obviously. They have like a 40-point win over Humboldt, and Humboldt is now obviously their stock is back and rising. So I'll let you kind of talk, but after this, but I think it is pretty clearly Van Meter, Central Line, Georgia Little Rock, maybe Monticello. I want to see them play some more people first, and then it's everybody else.
Yeah, I think this is going to be really interesting if both of these teams do end up making it to the state title game because we'd be seeing a Central Lion George Little Rock who is in the state title game last year. They won it all with Zach Lutmer,
Mhm.
and and then this year they would be playing Van Meter, who was in the state championship in a lower class last season. I think that would
Yeah.
just be kind of an interesting storyline that would be kind of fun to watch. But I mean, without a doubt, this would be such an awesome game to watch. And if this ends up being the state title game, it will be a fireworks show no matter what.
Yeah, Nick, I don't know how you'd write that headline. Two teams looking to go back to back, but they're playing each other now. So yeah,
Right.
I don't know what if that's happened before. What that I know teams have changed classes before, obviously, but pretty crazy that's the case in Class 2A. But I'm gonna move off to Class 1A because um, that's all I've kind of got for Class 2A right there. Class 1A, some notable scores. Grundy Center picked up a nice win over Columbus Catholic on Thursday. Columbus Catholic was top 10, so a nice win for Grundy Center, sticking at the number 1 spot. They are another team, Nick. I know we're talking about number 1 seeds hanging on. Grundy Center has done a good job of defending that number 1. They've had a few close games and a few blowouts, but nevertheless, they are holding on to that spot. I know my upset pick indeed hit in this one. Sumner Fredericksburg over MFL Marmac. I think that was a little bit of a bold one too. MFL Marmac undefeated, just coming off a rout over Applington Parkersburg last week, and Sumner Fredericksburg. They showed up and they get a win over the number 2 team in Class 2A. Sumner Fredericksburg's lone loss was to Dyke New Hartford last week, so it was still a very good team, but That one is kind of an eye opener there because NFL Marmac had not scored less than 34 points all year, and this week they come out and get stifled by Sumner Fredericksburg and the Cougars 13-9. Uh, Sumner Fredericksburg, not a team I know a ton about, but obviously Davis Van Sickle 13 for 19 for 163 in the air. It looked like I don't know if that's correct. Their leading rusher had 6 attempts for 12 yards. I don't know. This must have just been this just must have been a bloodbath in the trenches and just a battle of field position all night. But that's the game that really stood out to me, Nick. I don't remember what your upset pick was. I'll let you kind of talk, and I'm not sure. I don't remember right off the bat.
Yeah, shout out. That was my pick was AHSTW. They only had a 1 point loss to, I think, still undefeated Trainer. So I almost hit with the pick. I was not able to succeed in the end of the day, but I was close enough, I think. 1 point. I think I agree with you on that. MFO Marmac, I was kind of looking at that game, but I just thought, Marmac is looking just stellar this season. They were perfect. And in terms of record, and I just didn't see it happening, obviously. And I mean, clearly, I was completely wrong. That was a huge win for them, 13-9. And Sumner Fredericksburg, I were they still in the top 10? I know they were in the top 10 a
Yeah,
couple of
they were
weeks
number
ago.
11. Yep.
Okay, yeah, so they're still hanging in there, and now they should get a pretty decent boost up in their rankings. And now all of a sudden we have another top three team falling, just to show how much we know as analysts. We don't know anything. Um, just just I think that Class 2A is shaping up to be really interesting. You see Underwood, they just freshly lost their number one spot, if I remember correctly, or at least they were a top five team. They won pretty handedly, 49-0. Um, Looking for some other notable scores that I am not seeing off of the bat.
Yeah, Underwood. They're staying at number 3. Their lone loss is to Van Meter in week 1, so they've done a good job at holding down. And I'll kind of piggyback off you there, Nick. I think Class 1A is kind of shaping out to be Grundy Center and everyone else. We're kind of talking about where the tier list is in each class, like who's there. I think right now it's Grundy Center. I think other teams that I kind of have an eye out on. I've been trying to pay attention more to Class 1A. I really like Underwood. Obviously, their lone loss to Van Meter by just 7 points in a game. They were up 14 at one point, and now Van Meter is looking like a star in Class 2A. So I think Underwood has to be in that conversation. I think West Branch has to be in that conversation. And I think Regina Catholic. I know I've talked about them before. They kind of got into our ranks really, really late, but this team is proving to be a team that can score with anybody. Regina 4-0. They're number 12 right now. They're probably going to get another jump. And they've just dismantled everybody they've played. They've scored 40 points in every week. I remember I told you that stat, Nick, and they did it again this week, winning 49-14. So I think Regina Catholic is going to be another team that needs to have their name in the conversation. Is that kind of how you're seeing Class 1A as well?
No, yeah, I completely agree. I had a lot of fun going out and watching Grundy Center. Um, that they're such a great team. You look at them. I could definitely see them being a team that if they could probably move up a class or two and still perform very well. Um, they looked really great. I thought their pass game was awesome, and they were playing. I think it was a ranked PCM team. Yeah, it was a top three matchup, and they beat them pretty handedly. They beat them by a blowout victory, if I remember correctly. And I think you're exactly right. You put it perfectly. It's Grundy Center and everybody else as of right now. I think that if Grundy Center doesn't have any slip ups and they're able to keep playing this football that they've been playing all year so far, other than that week one, like 7-6 win that they had or something like that, they have looked like the clear front runner.
Yeah, no doubt. I will say before we move on to Class A, Dyke New Hartford is also a team that you need to look out for. They have 2 losses. They play really good defense, and their offense was able to get going last night. They put up like 50 in a win over Central Springs. Moving on to Class A, though, and this is kind of the class I'm kind of starting to learn a ton about. So I will start, and I'll let you piggyback off me. The score, my upset pick It was a bold one. It was number one Madrid going down. It almost happened. Earlham falling to Madrid 13-6 in a really good game. Madrid, I tell you what, they are the number one team in Class A, but by no means are they world beaters. Class A is extremely open. I'm extremely excited to see how this one ends up shaping out. I think this could be one where a team outside the top five ends up winning it all. And I truly, truly believe that. West Hancock, a team that I have my eye on right now, they slipped up earlier in the year, but they were kind of who I thought was going to run away with this one. I know there's some other scores I wanted to talk about as I'm sifting through here. Oh, your upset pick, Nick. It took until after midnight because they had some issues with the lights. But East Buchanan, they just fell out of our rankings actually because they lost to Starmont like 46-0 on last Thursday. But they come out this week and they beat the new number 2 team, Northland, pretty handedly. So your upset pick hit. I think you had a better record than me this week. You did a good job for getting all the hate in the comments, but nevertheless, your upset pick hits. Linville Solely, they win a lot of wins inside the top 5. Woodbury Central picks up a win. St. Ansgar, they won. So Class A, nothing too wild besides North Lynn falling. West Hancock again 62-0. I will say a team that I kind of have my eye on as a potential team to kind of break out is Woodbury Central. They were in the Dome last year. And guys to look out for if you ever watch this team in the Dome or wherever you see is Drew Clunder. I mean, these Class A teams, usually they're run heavy, but this team is the opposite. They are going to air it out, and they have receivers. They're just a ton of fun to watch. So that's kind of my input there. Lisbon, their team rising, they win as well. Nick, I don't know if you have anything for Class A. I know you're not really adept to Class A as much as I am, but is there anything that stands out to you?
Yeah, I'll give you I'll give you my pick right now for the state title game. I am looking at Linville Sully and Madrid right now. Those are my two teams that I think that could come out on top, and they're gonna face it off for the title. And my two rising teams that I've been really liking as I've been kind of watching from a distance at Class A is Maquoketa Valley. Their stock is kind of rising. They got a 50-0 win in a blowout this week. And St. Ansgar, they got a good win over a good Nashua Plainfield team, 28-6. So right now, that's who I'm looking at. I like Lisbon as well. I think that their stock is rising a little bit to a 17-7 win this week. And like you said, this is just kind of an average week, not a ton of upsets, other than, of course, my very knowledgeable pick, East Buchanan over Northland.
Yeah, totally. I will say Maquoketa Valley as one of your dark horses. I totally agree. Lance McShane is their running back. He is just about leading the state in every rushing category. Him and Caden Amigon from Columbus Community are two of the best running backs in Class A and two of the best running backs in the entire state of Iowa. So they're both home in Class A. I think if I had to give my early Dome pick, I think I'd go West Hancock and Woodbury Central. I think West Hancock, I'm picking two teams that have been there and done that. West Hancock obviously finishing runner-up to Grundy Center last year, so I still like them. And I think Woodbury Central, they were a Dome team last year. They fell in the semis. They returned their star quarterback, the leading pass in the entire class. I think they get there and they figure out a way to make it to the title. So that rounds up Class A. Some other scores: South Central Calhoun picking up a win, Logan Magnolia picking up a win, Kingsley Pearson and Bo Goodwin picking up a win. And ACGC, I will mention them quick. New to our rankings, they had a huge win over South Central Calhoun last week. They come out again and they beat Riverside. So ACGC, I think, are they still undefeated or do they have one slip up? They are 5-0. So ACGC, one of the remaining undefeated teams in Class A, whose stock is quickly rising. Nevertheless, Nick, let's move on to Class 8 player, our final class. I'm not going to lie, I have not looked at Class 8 player at all. You did the scoreboard for them. I will say before I hand it off to you, my upset pick did hit. Woodbine over Arweva. The Rockets were newly ranked, but Woodbine and Arweva had some common opponents. They played pretty tight, so that's why I went with them. I'm not sure. I'll hand it off to you because I know you messed with the scoreboard. What score stood out for you?
Yeah, I mean, first I'll take this one. It was
Oh,
kind of a
you're
shot in the dark for
Mormon
Mormon
Trail in
Trail.
Bedford. Oh, Bedford, baby. You don't down the
Yeah,
Bulldog.
I know. It was kind of like I said, it was kind of a shot in the dark. I was kind of scanning through. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really know any teams that I thought had a chance. Obviously, completely missing there. I mean, it wasn't even close. 76-6 Bedford. Never doubt the Bulldogs. Moravia 60-6 over Twin Cedars. I didn't see really any ranked matchups. I feel like a team that we don't talk about as enough as Gladbrook Rhinebeck, the number one team. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just kind of been a routine for them. They just kind of show up and put up 70 to 50 points every week and beat their teams by quite a margin, and they're just kind of dominating Class 8 man right now. I mean, that is it's not really been close for a lot of their games. Or is this kind of your pick for the state title favorite right now?
Yeah, it definitely is, but I totally agree. I do think Gladbrook Rhinebeck is not getting enough talk as they should, and it's kind of like the offensive line play. When you're not talking about them, it's probably because they're doing a good job, and you're only really talking about them when they're doing a bad job. So Gladbrook Rhinebeck, I think them and Southeast Polk are the only teams that have gone wire to wire number one. Nope, Grundy Center as well. So we've got three teams among seven classes that have been wire to wire week 1 to week 5 and probably week 6 holding down the number one spot. But I think Class 8 man is extremely interesting. There's a ton of teams I really like. I really like Cam and Chase Speaker, obviously younger brother of Lane Speaker, the like all-time 8 man rushing leader or something crazy like that. He was a stud, so I'm assuming Chase is just as good. They're going to be a ton of fun. You got Winfield Not Union with Cam Buffington, and obviously, like you said, the team that doesn't get talked about enough, the number one team, Gladbrook Rhinebeck, with Isaac Clark and company. They just show up and they put up numbers and they go home and they do it again the next week. So I totally agree. I think those are the kind of the three teams that I have my eye on. Is there anyone else that you kind of see outside? I think Bedford you got to talk about too, but I'll hand it off to you.
Yeah, I really like Waco. They had some great postseason experience last year. I thought they looked really good. I was watching some of their games last year when they were in the dome, and I thought they looked like a really great team. And it looks like they're having a pretty good year this year. I'm not exactly familiar how good Easton Valley is. I don't believe they were ranked, but this is kind of. I think Waco would be my pick as a dark horse team to be rising up. I say dark horse pretty lightly. I'm pretty sure they're still a top 10 team. No, they are a top 10 team. They're in the back half of that top 10, but I think right now they would be my pick to kind of to be my dark horse. And look at this was a pretty close game. Montezuma and BGM. I feel like I see every year when I pull up the stat leaders, there's some GM player. I don't remember the name, but I feel like he is always at the top of the leaderboards for the entire state. So they keep it pretty close with a decent Montezuma team. I think they fell out of our top 10 rankings this week, but nevertheless, it was a good win for BGM. But right now, I think Waco is my dark horse team for when we're coming up on playoffs here in just a few short weeks.
Yeah, for sure. And I gotta say, I like Don Bosco because they've picked up steam. They're playing really good ball right now. They're getting hot. They're 4-1, and their one loss was to Gladbrook Rhinebeck 34-21. Really, Gladbrook Rhinebeck the only test they've had to this point where they've been close. And I know that Don Bosco GR game was like I think it was like 6-6 or something. Like it was really low scoring at halftime. So I think Bosco, obviously a proven program as a team that could also go in there and hang with the best of them. Also, Rems and St. Mary's, a team that like is a dynasty. I think you could argue in Class 8 player. And they lost. I felt like everybody on their team, and they just come out this year and they just win. I mean, they were outside of our top 10 to start, but rightfully so because we didn't know anything about them. And what do you know? 5 weeks later, they are 5-0 and looking just as dangerous as before. But Nick, I don't know if there's anything else we got to talk about. One more time, what is your biggest story across all classes in week 5 before we head out?
Right now, other than that Webster City game, I think right now is Solon. I think Solon. after their, I think it's just so interesting to see the first couple weeks. They only put up, I think maybe 7 to 14 points in the first couple weeks. And now all of a sudden they're putting over 30 points a game in the last 3 weeks, I believe. They're quickly rising. I think that they got a really big boost last week. I wouldn't be surprised if they go up yet again with Harlan falling. Um, and I think Solon is all of a sudden becoming a possible title contender, certainly a potential for the playoff. But yeah, right now my storyline is Solon, without a doubt.
I like it. I like on ESPN they hand out like helmet stickers and stuff. You'd give your helmet sticker to Solon. If I had a helmet sticker, I think I'd give it to Cedar Rapids Kennedy, the team. They lost their first 2 games and they've done nothing but show up and win games in their last 3. And really in convincing fashion. They've put up 30 points in every single game this year. Their last 2 games have been 34-0, 45-7, and obviously last week 61-34 over City High. A really good team and a tough place to play in Batesfield. So my helmet sticker, the Cedar Rapids Kennedy Cougars, ton of fun to watch them play. I watched them lose the Dowling, but I could see the potential, no doubt. But Nick, I think that wraps us up. 45 minutes. It's kind of what we were aiming for. It was a ton of fun. Excited to cook up some stat graphics and whatnot. But be safe and let's have a heck of a week next week. But everybody, we will catch you guys next time.